We'll do a double click for accuracy.
Yeah, please.
I did.
Done. Says you're controlling them.
Cool. Well, it is 1 o'clock on the dot. I'll give about another minute or so for people to roll in, and then we can hop in and get started. Or we can just fill 45 minutes with Danny and Melissa stand-up comedy. Give the people what they want.
I am sure there are certain people in this room that have heard enough of that. So
Your sister said that gets her vote. All jokes aside, welcome everyone to SEO and Content That Converts, a B2B playbook for digital growth. We are grateful to have you all here. There we go. For today's webinar, we will be walking through just some quick intros, introducing myself and Danny, as well as Apiary, and sharing our objective with you today. We'll cover why your current SEO strategy likely isn't working. From there, we'll move into building an SEO strategy for revenue, not just ranking. Then we'll move into building a content strategy that converts and supports your SEO strategy. And then moving into tying all that into UX and technical SEO. So what does that look like in execution terms as far as your navigation and website structure? And then lastly, how do you build a sustainable content system that supports all of these areas? And then once you have that part done, how do you prove the ROI on all of these activities and efforts? And then lastly, we will have some final takeaways and a Q&A. I will ask that if you have questions along the way, feel free to put those in the chat. We've added some slide numbers so that if you have something that pertains to a specific slide, you can note that, but we will circle back to all questions at the end. So about Apiary Digital, if you are not familiar with Apiary, we are a collective of senior marketing experts with experience spanning anywhere from 5 years to 15 years, some above and beyond. We are a flexible collective model that delivers high impact strategy and execution across a variety of digital channels. I myself am Melissa Meredith. I am a client strategy consultant here at Apiary Digital. I have a little over 13 years of experience under the digital marketing umbrella, with content and workflows being my strength and my love language. I'll hand it over to Danny and let him introduce himself as well.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Mel. So yeah, as mentioned, my name is Danny Iannelli. I'm a senior marketplace strategist here at Apiary Digital. I've been with the company for a little over 3 years, and in those past few years, I've been helping brands of all sizes, from startups to global names, improve digitally. Have a wide range of experience across digital strategy collectively across most of the channels in this space, but my real expertise lies in SEO, content, websites, and UX, and then making sure that connective tissue is all aligned strategically, both digitally and for broader company goals. So that's really where we kind of sit within this webinar today, and we're looking forward to kind of teaching you and educating you along the way.
Awesome. Thanks for the strong intro. Way to outdo me.
I would never do such a thing. I have to stay up to your standards.
So why are we here today? As Danny noted, his strength is within the SEO space and mine is within the content space. So we're really here to help you simplify and scale your SEO with a buyer first and conversion driven strategy. We want to help walk through the process of developing an SEO keyword strategy that's driven by intent and not just volume or vanity metrics, and then understand how to support that through content, and then tie that all in with a user journey and navigation that's driven by CRO. So what will you walk away with today? First and foremost, how to build an high impact SEO strategy, one that is aligned to business goals and then ties those business goals and objectives to keyword intent. You'll also walk away with a optimized buyer journey map. So understanding how to take the SEO intent driven keyword strategy and align that to the buyer journey and typical marketing funnel. And then from there, you'll understand how to empower both of those activities with existing content, whether refreshing, repurposing, or creating net new, understanding how to map your content back into the intent driven keyword strategy. And then lastly, how do you align your SEO with your UX for conversion rate optimization, as noted? Really just understanding how to build a website that supports the buyer journey and helps get them to where they want to go faster and more clearly identify the information that they're looking for.
Cool. With that said, I think I can go ahead and take over the next couple sections here, and we're going to start first with why your SEO may not be working. We'll go ahead and dive into why the usual playbook fails in B2B. And what we're talking about, the usual playbook, we're talking about the historical playbook that's been consistent for a long period of time. But now with the introduction of AI, geo, the landscape is certainly changing, right? Especially on the B2B side. So as we look at old world versus new reality, the old world focusing on things like those top 10 blue links at the very top of the screen. The new reality is SGE is taking over that space, and we're really in a competition now with AI and those zero-click results. So as we kind of familiarize ourselves with the old world versus the new reality, what we realize is within the B2B space, as Melissa's kind of already alluded to, chasing traffic over intent is really not the primary goal here. I would challenge everyone here to think to themselves, would they prefer 10 lions or 100 sheep? That's a constant kind of metaphor or adage I use as I'm describing and working with clients throughout this process. We're really focused in on those lions. What's going to move the needle for you all? We also look at siloed content with a disconnected strategy. If your SEO and content teams, as well as your website teams and general marketing teams, are not working collectively and communicating and collaborating, what you're going to end up is some really high quality work, but specific to that individual channel that may not be complementary in terms of there's no clear journey from discovery to conversion, as well as the messaging created in a vacuum, not around buyer needs. So each channel is going to have their own assumption as to what's important or what is effective. That's what we kind of want to bring all together so that we're collaborating and working towards those goals in a cohesive unit there. And then what we're really, another focus that we're seeing is historical metrics don't really map to revenue. So what used to be the reality of the old world and what metrics for SEO look like, those are all evolving. It's not just rankings anymore. We're definitely looking at a distinction between branded and non-branded traffic, as well as calculating lead scoring. So what's an MQL, what's an SQL, what's warm leads, what's cold leads. Those are all taken into account as we move through this process. So this slide here, and I'm just going to be as honest as I possibly can. My whole goal is to try not to read to any of you, but in some cases there is a need to actually read line by line, slide by slide. I'm going to try and synthesize this down just a little bit for you all. But this is not even specific to just a B2B buyer. This is specific to how the landscape of buying has changed digitally over the course of the past couple of years here. I think everyone is aware, because we're all digitally inclined, we don't read, we skim. We look for heading structures, we look for highlights, we look for colors, bold points, things along those lines to really draw our attention to find what we need. Conversion occurs on the B2B. This one is specific to B2B. Conversion occurs on desktop. While there's a high priority for mobile optimization, because that is what feeds into Google search, through the search engine's rankings and algorithms, the reality is people are conducting research and making engagement on a desktop device in the B2B space. I alluded to it earlier, AI overviews are now resulting in fewer clicks directly to your website. So your informational top of funnel, that demand generation may be limited by AI, and we need to figure out ways to actually show up in AI overviews as well. We're also going to be looking at shifting buyer expectations. People don't want to have to jump through hoops to find pricing, demos, proof, clarity, transparency about your products. That should all live and be very naturally discoverable across your website and across your content. A little bit later, we're going to look into the homepage litmus test, which is a great gauge for the homepage specifically, but also for your high intent, high priority pages. Things to keep in mind as far as, can your visitors quickly identify a problem, solution, audience, proof of what you're claiming, as well as a CTA. And then the reality is, for a long time, marketing was selling features and products. We're moving now into solving problems. And that's something you're going to have to keep in mind as we move through the SEO and content creation portion of this. So with that said, as we looked at general buyers, now we're looking at B2B buyers and why they need a slightly different approach. These B2B buyers, we're trying to treat with white gloves and make it easy for them to find solutions and content relevant to their needs. The reality is not everyone comes to this website is ready to engage or buy, but when they are ready, does your site accommodate and expedite their needs? That's the big question that we're looking to do. And in doing so, there's really 6 core components to a website. I'm not going to say these are the only ones, so please note that, but these are core components that we're starting to see more prevalent and necessary to keep up with the competitive best practice and landscape. So we're looking at user-friendly navigation. I don't think that's any surprise to anyone here, but it's something that we've seen across outdated websites or people looking to increase their visibility digitally. It really starts with your menu, your navigation, your site architecture, and information architecture. They're looking for pricing transparency. I guarantee you everyone here at one point or another has visited a website and it says call for pricing, and the first thing you do is exit out of that website and go somewhere else. There's a level of pricing transparency that you can create on your website that doesn't have to give everything away, but can give enough information to a visitor that they feel comfortable moving forward and engaging with your organization. Above the fold CTAs, still consistent, still very important. Sticky navigation in CTAs, as we see infinite scroll and longer pages starting to exist, building in sticky nav and sticky CTAs so that when a person finally gets to what they're looking for, they can have an actionable event. Ideal situation. Form logic, don't make it hard for people. If you know what company they're from, what their first name is, what their email address is, they go to engage with you, have it pre-populated. Most forms and most platforms now can accommodate that. And if not, that's a quick optimization that we would consider, we would recommend you considering. And then trust badges. Everybody wants to have a level of proof, security, that comfort blanket around them. Those are your trust badges. Those are the authority signals that you're sending to a visitor. So those are things that are really critical to the B2B buyer journey. And we want to make sure they're included as often as possible across your site.
Also noting on the trust badges too, those can be certifications and awards that your company's received.
1000%. Yeah, we want to trust you in any way and format we can. So please don't be shy about being a little boisterous and being proud of what you've done and accomplished as an organization.
Humility does not win there.
There it is. So as we look at the opportunity here, what we really want to figure out is how do we create an intent-driven buyer-first SEO? No longer are we accommodating Google, even though you see a giant Google logo and creative asset here on the right of the page. It is still important, but the real goal here is making sure we're putting the buyer first throughout this process. What does that mean exactly? It means tailored SEO. That means when we go back to that 10 lions versus 100 sheep, you're getting the lions of the traffic quality, not the sheep. We're looking for funnel aligned content traffic, so we reduce friction. Again, make things simple and intuitive for people. Technical SEO, strong UX equals a conversion lift. So if you have all the technical components that are required for a website, and now you have a very strong and user-friendly UX, the conversion naturally sort of increases and improves. Measurement tied to pipeline, as we alluded to, get rid of the vanity metrics, get rid of the outdated metrics. We need to start tracking and figuring out what is important to us as a business. And I can tell you, having worked with a number of clients over the years, no business is the same. So if you're just using canned metrics across the board, that is not going to suffice to the value of SEO content or what your website is providing. You need to tailor those to your own goals. And then at the end, we do still recognize Google rewards the EAT policy. If you have not encountered EAT yet, or you're unfamiliar with it, consider this your notice to please start to familiarize yourself with it, because I promise as you start to leverage this for content moving forward, all of a sudden those rankings, that traffic, that engagement, it will start to improve across your content because Google is starting to reward you with more traffic and more visibility there. With all that said, we're going to move into the second section here, which is the foundation of everything. How do you build SEO for revenue, not just rankings? You're going to hear me probably say this again and again and again, and you're going to get real sick of it. Intent beats volume. Intent beats volume. intent beats volume. So these, as we look through here, high search volume at one time was great. That was the goal everybody was kind of pushing for. It is now high quality. Again, 10 lions, 100 sheep. That is what you want to consistently think of. I look at it this way, and I'll ask to everyone here. Obviously, you can't answer right now because I think you're all on mute. But theoretically speaking, which is better, 1,000 visitors with 1 conversion or 100 visitors with 10 conversions? Those are the metrics and things that we're really starting to prioritize, and making sure that we're reaching the right audience at the right moment.
I'm going to hop in on this one really quick, Danny, because I think something else that's one of the bigger challenges here is typically the individuals or teams polling reporting are sharing those with leadership, right? And so there's also a learning curve and an education curve if you're reporting to people above you on why this matters and helping them understand that the way in which we report on SEO has changed. This would be a really good slide to pull and share with them to help them understand why, yes, we had 10,000 visitors last month, but we only had 1 conversion. Here's why the way in which we do things needs to change.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that across the board, and that's why we're trying to move away from canned metrics and canned dashboards as well. Customized dashboards, really focusing in on campaign metrics, things like that, and making sure you can track those metrics for your campaigns are going to be really critical to understand what value did your SEO and content really bring you. On top of that, when we start to look at, as I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, buyers don't really care about your products. I know that sounds weird when you say it like that, but they don't care about the features that you described for what you built. They care about the problems and why it matters and who it matters to. So like, what problems is your product fixing for them? Because then you can start to, if you're starting to reach that audience and start to understand building a solution for individuals within their own problem set, then you start to figure out, okay, this is the quality of traffic or the quality of content I need to create to reach this audience. On top of that, that modern SEO, it's not just about visibility. It's about a relevance and timing side. You're not just trying to be seen. You're trying to be the answer for when it counts. And I know that sounds a little bit odd, but you'll start to see as we get a little bit later in the presentation, there's a way to align your keywords and your content to figure out where it's necessary across the buyer journey. And Mel's going to talk about that a little bit later. Moving on through this, if I can get back to the right screen. There we go. So from the SEO side of things, and this I'm hoping isn't a totally new slide to anyone here, but I'm going to kind of cover it just a little bit. While it's similar to the sales funnel, keywords also have their own sort of funneled category state. So as we look through what type of keywords we have here, we need to make sure we have a healthy balance of the right categories of keywords. So as we look at informational, people are looking to get specific answers. They're not necessarily ready to buy or make a decision, but they're looking for the people that they can vet and kind of figure out. Commercial, they're moving closer to the consideration phase and probably vetting out a select few companies or organizations that could resolve their problem. The transactional side, obviously, similar to your decision-making side or your bottom of funnel, this is where they're here to complete an action. They've done their informational research, they've vetted you against competitors, and now they're ready to take action. Navigational, consider that table stakes. This is a lot of branded traffic. I wouldn't worry too much about this, but if you're not seeing any navigational keywords or sort of branded traffic within your keyword research, that's a clear sort of signal to me that your advertising side or your awareness building, not only digitally, probably needs a little bit bigger of a lift so that that name can start to become more synonymous within the product set or service set that you're looking to operate within. So how do we do this? You saw me talk about 3 different really core components or categories of keywords. We're looking to not just rank, we're looking to guide the user's journey. And so in doing so, again, thinking of it like a funnel, you're starting at that informational level. From the informational level, once you have them into your website, where are you pushing them next? If you ask them to immediately take a transaction, that's sort of like jumping from first date to marriage. It's a little aggressive. It works for some people, I understand. But for the most part, we want to start to push them a little bit further down the funnel, not making them jump too far ahead. So as we start to map things out and you start to do your keyword research, you're going to want to focus on having that healthy blend, like I said, of informational as well as commercial as well as transactional, so that you're able to design and build experiences that accommodate your buyer journey throughout the entire process. And I'm trying not to read every single slide to you, so this is sort of contextual. If and when you have questions, please come back and refer to this slide, and it'll point you the right direction as to what are we looking at throughout the keyword research process to identify the keywords and terms that are really critical to the success of our marketing and our marketing campaigns. With that said, I'll turn it over to Mel to talk through some content that actually converts.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I'm going to need you to click through one more time for me.
Gotcha. I got you.
So as Danny touched on, SEO strategies built around keyword intent primarily focus on informational, commercial, and transactional keywords. From the content lens, where I see this break down the most in the intersection of SEO and content is focused on everything you see on the right. So where it pertains to the funnel and what format it's in. SEO tends to be more focused on the keyword intent. So think landing pages, SEO pages. This is a visual display of how you can really start to intersect those two things and create things that are not only SEO keyword intent driven, but also still align with the buyer journey within the funnel, and then to the formats that support all of those areas of the funnel. So, for instance, your informational keywords you can think of as more top of funnel awareness and discovery. As far as formats go, those are going to be events, podcasts, and ebooks. Your commercial keywords are going to be more of that discovery and consideration. So, as it pertains to formats, you're looking at quizzes and demos on demand. And then your transactional, I'm going to say transactional and not navigational, because as Danny noted, the navigational ones tend to be more brand specific. Those are more your intent and decision stages. So those are typically supported by nurture emails, case studies, or requested demos. And so the more that you can see these two things, not as operating independently, but operating in support of each other. And then, as Danny noted, potentially a blog post that leads into an infographic, or an infographic that leads into an analyst report. Understanding how you can map these things to support each other as well is really where you're going to start to see your SEO and your content align and support each other. So let's talk allocation. A lot of times in B2B, especially, there's a lot of emphasis on the bottom of the funnel. So your decision content, your transactional keywords, and your I need proof this will work for my team and ROI. Unfortunately, that is not the way that the buyer learns and educates themselves. It's actually quite the opposite. So when you're talking content allocation, where should I be creating the most content? Where should I be focusing my SEO strategy in terms of the keywords and where they fall in the intent? 50% of your average content allocation should be to awareness content. 35% of that allocation should be to consideration content, and then 15% should be allocated to the decision content. So brands are under a lot of pressure to create and justify content for the awareness and consideration, because it's not transactional and it's not always as measurable, which is where we'll circle back here in a little bit to show the ROI of these efforts. Skipped one. Got it.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. So, what does this look like in practice? As I noted on the first slide, there tends to be a lot of breakdown and some siloed effort between SEO and content. This is an example of how you can take those different keyword intent signals and still align them within the funnel, while also creating content in different formats that aren't just landing pages and kind of support the full ecosystem of SEO and content. So first, you'd want to start with a specific topic that your IC cares about. This can be broad, generic. It doesn't even have to be tied to SEO yet, but you want to kind of start putting yourself in that mindset as to what is my buyer, my persona, my ICP thinking about. From there, you can identify a broad, high intent keyword such as B2B SEO strategy. We can see that here noted as the target keyword, and noting that that's also more of a awareness and consideration funnel stage keyword. So we're going to have a landing page. We're not going to have something that's a little bit more of a dense format. Step 3 is going to be brainstorming 3 to 6 supporting cluster topics that go deeper into your use cases, objections, or subtopics. So you can see that here exercised also with the consideration and decision. Something else to know is the mix. So we have around 3 pieces dedicated to awareness, roughly 2 pieces dedicated to consideration, and then 1 piece dedicated to decision. Formats are in support of that as well, but that goes back to the previous slide on really understanding how your keywords and formats also support the buyer journey within the funnel. And the next slide is a blank example of this so that when you revisit the slide deck or the replay, you can take a screenshot or you can recreate this, but you actually have something to activate against, not just in theory, but in practice. So we've talked about creating content, aligning it to your SEO strategy. Once you've created the content, one of the areas that I see a lot of B2B companies fall short is they check all the boxes up front and then just hit publish. They don't go back through and retroactively look to ensure that their content is touching all of the key areas. What are those key areas, you ask? Well, they are tone, readability, visuals, and structure. So each of these ensure that all of the different aspects of your strategy kind of bring it all together. And before you hit publish, you're hitting all the areas that you want to hit. So as far as tone goes, does this voice match your audience? Does it speak how they would speak? Does it express ideas the way that they would maybe comprehend them? If not, adjust your tone to align with the buyer expectations. As far as readability, is the content easy to scan? Are there clear headers, bullets, spacing? As a OCD person myself, love a clear outline. Your audience probably does too, especially when they're trying to quickly scan and pull out the key pieces of information. So if the answer is no, you can break your content into digestible chunks with strong formatting cues. This is supported heavily by your visuals, which is number 3. So are your visuals aiding in understanding or cluttering it? Is your CTA placement clear, like Danny talked about earlier too, including CTAs throughout? If this is not happening, you can use your visuals to support reading flow and prioritize your CTA visibility and clarity. This is where a great graphic designer is a key asset to your content and SEO team. Lastly, structure. This touches a little bit more on the technical aspects of SEO. So, looking at how your headers are used and how keywords are naturally included. We've all visited a landing page before where it was very clear that it was written for SEO with no lens on the other pieces. And same goes for the inverse. So, this really just touches on ensuring that both your content and how your user is going to engage with your content are aligned with the technical support of your SEO strategy.
Speaking of technical SEO, I'm going to jump back in here for a couple of minutes and talk about how we can sort of combine and synthesize or synergize rather UX and technical SEO so that it drives conversion here. So I'm just going to cut to the chase here. Everybody has a first impression in life. Sometimes your first impressions are good. Sometimes they're bad, but I can tell you they last a very, very long time. With that said here, consider page speed and page load speed your first impression to a visitor, especially within the B2B space. As we look through here, we're looking at a comparison of 2 different sites, MailChimp versus Jira. What you'll see is similar page size, similar request calls, but drastically different page load speed time. So when you're sitting here looking at 36.92 seconds, I don't think anyone in the modern world is waiting around to see this page. They're going to go ahead and move on to something else. But similarly, as you look at page size, MailChimp's actually lower than Jira. Jira is a larger page size, 936 milliseconds. I think we can all, even in today's world, 936 milliseconds seems very reasonable to wait for a page load or for a page to upload. So the key thing that I want to mention here is actually the down in the bottom left corner. This is one of those ones I am going to read to you. Mobile optimization is essential. That is how you are going to be perceived by Google. But 70 to 80% of B2B organic traffic still comes from desktop. Prioritize a desktop first experience especially where the conversions are actually taking place. So they may poke around or visit the site initially on mobile. They're doing deep dives and research and actually engaging on the site via a desktop. And that is consistent across the board within the B2B space. You heard me talk about this a little bit earlier as far as the homepage litmus test. This is what we are really judging and optimizing homepages of in the B2B space, as well as really any space at this point. If you're going to have a website, I would encourage you to kind of evaluate whether or not you have a clear problem that you're addressing, a clear audience that you're speaking to, a clear solution that you're offering to that audience, as well as the proof to that audience that it then works, and then a CTA. What do you want your audience to do? This should all, especially within your homepage, be very, very apparent very, very quickly. And what we have in the next couple of slides, and we're not going to spend too much time on them, is examples of underperforming versus best in class. So what we have here is an example of an underperforming website called Rugged Controls. Again, I'm not going to read line by line for you. This is more for context after the webinar for you to go back and take a look at. But what I will do is bounce between these two slides quickly, take a good look at the visuals here, and then let's move on to HubSpot and take a look at the visuals here. I think you can instantaneously tell the difference as far as UX friendliness and how integrated their design and modules are across the space. Again, go back and take a look at those two websites and really compare the experiences and see how stuck you get on the Rugged Control site versus how easily it is to navigate and find where you're looking to go across HubSpot.
And you touched on it too, but I think it's really important to note, start with your homepage, but once your homepage can satisfy this, it's really helpful to look through this same lens at other key pages or high traffic and high volume pages too.
Yep, absolutely. High intent, high priority keywords, high intent pages, high priority keywords. I would encourage anyone designing a landing page for that content or for those terms to look at through the same lens as a starting point for building out that page. So you heard me talk about it earlier. This is, again, unfortunately, I'm going to have to read to you a little bit because I feel like these are incredibly critical to the B2B space, and we're seeing them become more and more present. Don't just tell buyers what to do. Show them that they can trust you and that you can solve their problems. How do we do that? Again, speaking through the navigation, you want to segment your navigation for relevance. So you're either grouping by industry, by role, or by need, use case, things along those lines, application. You really have to get into that sort of mentality, make it easy for people to navigate to where they want to go. Using mega menus, you're starting to see them more and more. They're becoming very visually engaging. Take the time to really build out your menu and structure it in a positive way. Keep your click paths 1 to 2 from the top at most for, again, high priority, high intent pages. Trustworthiness, you've got to build visual credibility. So logos, testimonials, certifications, awards, as Mel alluded to a little bit earlier. And use a consistent and polished design. We often see it. You don't have a style guide, a brand guide, it can look like a Frankenstein. I know that because every deck that I ever put together for Apiary Digital has to go to one of our graphic designers so that they can clean it up and make it look all very, very consistent, we'll say, and aligned with our branding. So thank you to everyone within the graphic design department at Apiary, because I know I don't make it easy for you. In addition to that, we're going to take a look at, again, smart logic. Make things easy for people. If you can fill it out, you know who's visiting your site. They've already supplied a certain amount of information to you throughout their experience. If they go to fill out a form or reach out to contact us, pre-populate things. If they're on a service page and or a product page and they're requesting a quote, you can probably pre-populate the product so that they don't have to enter that or hit the drop down. Things like that make it easy for people to move through the website. And again, it feeds into a frictionless action. Make action effortless. Keep CTAs visible, offer clear pricing or demos, use short action-focused button text. What I will say, and I've said this a lot on calls recently, and I really want to reinforce this because it's become a sticking point for me. If I see learn more, read now, click here, see how anymore on websites, you're missing an opportunity. Truthfully, those are ways to customize and speak one-to-one or one-to-few instead of one to everybody. Your products, your services, your organization, you are not selling to everyone. As Melissa alluded to earlier, you should have an ICP. You should have a total addressable market that you're familiar with. Speak to them, not to everyone. And that's really a core component of CTA buttons that we've started to implement across the board here for APA. All right, Mel, tell us how to build a sustainable system, will you?
So we've covered the intent-driven SEO strategy. We've covered how to support that through content that touches every aspect of the buyer journey. And we've covered the navigational CRO piece. So how do we bring this all together? Building an aligned SEO and B2B content strategy. So the first three things noted here are really things that should be done at one time, whether it's annually or biannually. These are not necessarily recurring activities. Once they've been completed, you can kind of consider them done, and then, like I said, revisit them year over year. From there, audit your existing content for relevance. This is an activity I would recommend at least biannually. It can help you understand what content is performing, and even areas that you may need to refresh your keywords based on your SEO strategy. From there, you can build topic clusters around buyer priorities. Then you can create a lean editorial plan. A lot of times I see B2B companies, especially, wanting to just be in a cycle of constantly creating. Part of your editorial plan should and can include existing content in your refresh and repurpose pieces. So, understanding how to not just be a content creation factory, but how to use what you have based on performance to your benefit. Then, lastly, publish, measure, improve. Publish, measure, and improve. This is again where you're looking at your performance based on intent and conversions, not just volume and traffic. All of these things are intended to satisfy what Danny touched on earlier, which is the EAT method that Google favors so highly: experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. I like to think of it very cheesily that your audience is hungry, give them something to eat. And here's how you can kind of do that. Uh, I'm big on cheesy analogies. So dad jokes, I'm holding for the end. Don't worry.
I like that.
So I wanted to touch on the buyer persona a little bit. ICP and buyer persona tend to be used very interchangeably, and they are not one and the same. Think of ICP more as your total addressable market, or TAM. It's the amount of people that actually exist within the ecosphere that may have or want what you offer. Buyer persona is a little bit more on the psychological wants, needs, desires end. So it touches a little bit more on your buyer background, their role based challenges, how they evaluate and make decisions, and really understanding the psychological aspect of the person you're intending to sell to is what helps you build that buyer persona, and then essentially get inside their head and think of the things that they're thinking of to then reverse engineer that back into your SEO strategy and then supporting that with content. So before you create any content, you need a clear picture of the person you're speaking to, their role, challenges, and what drives their decisions. So we've touched on this piece as well, which is the importance of refreshing and repurposing your content and then repeating that process. So first off, you want to start with a content strategy and integration. I'm sharing this from the lens of you likely already having that and having existing content. If not, that should be the foundation for all of the following efforts. When you're looking to refresh your content, it's best to start really with performance. What isn't performing or what is performing. So if something is within the top 5 to 20 position on Google, you can refresh that just to make sure that it stays in that position and continues to perform for you. Or if your keywords have changed a little bit, this is a good place to do that as well. Repurposing. So maybe something isn't performing well, but the meat of the content is there and it's really good content that aligns to your buyer personas. This is a good place to repurpose. So how can I make this a different format or move this to a different type of keyword intent keyword, different place in the funnel? Really just looking at that through the performance lens and how you can move something up or down based on where it's currently performing by refreshing and repurposing. Once you kind of get that process down, this is where it goes back to something Danny noted earlier, which is no two businesses are the same. Every keyword strategy, every content strategy should be specific to your business. But doing these should not be something that's a one and done activity. The process in which how you identify what's performing, what's refreshed and repurposed should become part of your process so that then you can repeat that process to use format winners again and again.
So yeah, and Mel did a great job of kind of setting this up as well. How do we prove the ROI? If every business is different, we got to make sure that we're tracking and looking at things through an individual business lens, not a one size fits all cookie cutter approach to measurement and traffic or measurement and tracking. So why does most SEO reporting fall short? Traffic does not necessarily equal pipeline. So if we think back to the earlier question around which is better, 1,000 visitors with 1 conversion or 100 visitors with 10 conversions, mathematically speaking, I could spin that to where I said, oh, I had a 900% increase in traffic. Oh, but you had a 90% decline in conversions, right? Whereas if we flip that to look at 100 visitors with 10 conversions, that's a 900% increase in conversion. And that is actual pipeline that is coming through, not traffic. So don't get hung up on vanity metrics there, that's for sure. Surface metrics, vanity metrics, interchangeable in that regard. But what we're really looking to do across our SEO reporting is make sure we're addressing 5 core components. The vanity metrics, branded versus non-branded. If 10,000 of your visits are for a branded search and only 100 are for non-branded, that tells me there's a lot of opportunity from a non-branded perspective out there for you. You just have to go out and start optimizing for non-branded rather than branded based terms. Same with inconsistent attribution. Don't feel bad if your attribution is inconsistent. This is consistent across many companies and organizations. There's not everyone has the team, the tools, or the time that is necessary to do this at a very, very detailed level. But I will say the more that you can define your attribution and understand it, the easier it gets from an SEO and content perspective to figure out what's winning and what is not. Benchmark by business objective as well. So as we sit here and think through, like I said, traffic and rankings may look great on a dashboard, but in the C-suites and boardrooms, if they're not bringing in pipeline and revenue or increasing your leads, making your sales team's life easier, you're going to hear about it, and it's probably not going to be the greatest conversations, unfortunately. Overlook conversions, again, a blog post may not be where they actually convert, but it may be where they discovered your product or your organization. So understanding that it didn't convert directly, but there's a level of awareness and nurture that comes from informational or awareness-based SEO and content that actually does help drive your business forward.
Which is also why we emphasize the percent of allocation to awareness and consideration at the top of the funnel. Just because you can't immediately measure it doesn't mean it's not impactful.
See, it's like we do this for a living and we've coordinated our efforts and strategies before. So no, as we sit here though, what's going to move the needle for you all? So I think you can see here, we've outlined it pretty well on the deck itself, but I would encourage you to start asking yourself questions as far as what's going to move the needle for you all. Questions like what is your actual priority? Are you trying to rank for primary keywords or growing organic traffic? If which case rankings and high intent are high stake terms, cool. That can be your metrics as you want to track. But if you're capturing existing demand or are you creating new demand would be another question. Are you watching branded versus non-branded performance? Does ROI mean revenue or does it mean efficiency gains? So as I think about a very successful SEO or content campaign, those campaigns are actually reducing the cost for paid. They're increasing the efficacy of your email channels. They're increasing your visibility across or engagement across social media because the content is stuff that people want to engage with. Same with SEO as far as if people are finding you without having to click on a paid ad, you're reducing costs across the paid side. You can start to use that money elsewhere in different formats and start to really improve your overall efficiency of your marketing department there. So as we look here, take a look at some of the metrics that we really would track. So again, going back to this old world versus new world, right? In the old world, traditional SEO, canned dashboards, things like that, impressions, keyword rankings, page views, sessions, bounce rate. Those were the golden tickets, right? They're still data and that we still want to collect and review it, but they are no longer the prioritized data, especially within the B2B space that we're really going to be focusing on. Things like branded versus non-branded split. The conversion rate is one of the biggest KPIs that we're going to read off of. MQLs, the demo requests, those types of things. Like the more you can bring in, obviously from the SEO side of things, we're really inclined for that. Influence pipeline, assisted conversions, revenue attribution. Again, you heard me talk about those a little bit in the earlier slides. These are all the types of things that we're starting to track on a consistent basis because we understand how critical they are to the success of B2B. It's not just visibility and keyword rankings anymore. I can go out there and get you as much traffic as you want, I promise. Please feel free to reach out. Happy to do so for you. But at the same time, it does not necessarily mean that I'm going to be bringing you in more revenue. So please keep that in mind as you work through your SEO and content strategy, because that's something we really harp on within Apiary, and we're kind of shifting that mindset completely across the board. So from an attribution side, again, I understand there are a lot of limitations from a resource perspective, timing, things along those lines. But what you'll want to do is mapped out here in the green, but I will say focus more on the bold, the terms in the bold and black. So as you sit here and define conversion goals and CRM analytics, you should definitely have those set up. If you, at the end of the day, if you don't know what success looks like, you can't measure it. So if you don't have goals, how do you track it? How do you set up those events? How do you set up those conversions? Use consistent UTMs and tagging, again, especially for lean teams or teams that do not have an advanced data analytics department. UTMs still work because I can follow you through the entire journey throughout your analytics. That is, if nothing else, please slap a UTM on things when possible. Again, branded versus non-branded split. That is knowing whether you're capturing demand or are you creating it. A really successful SEO and content strategy will create new demand for you if done correctly. Track assisted conversions over time. Reinforcing this point from earlier, B2B content rarely closes the deal in one click, but it often starts the conversation, right? So like that's what we want to do is get people in the door and continue the conversation and move them through the funnel. And then we want to connect content to revenue outcomes. So prove that your content in SEO is working and earns its place. So you'll be able to do that through showing which blogs, guides, pages, and influence opportunities eventually became closed in one there. Mel,
And one of the things you and I chatted about that I think is really critical here, but is often lost, is ensuring your tech stack supports this. So while there are attribution tools that exist that can kind of tie this all together for you, that's not always realistic, especially on smaller budgets, but just understanding what you're measuring and how, and then how to bring all of those pieces of data together from the various tools within your tech stack to tell the true story. So it's okay if you have 2 or 3 tools, but how are you pulling the metrics that you need from those tools to understand what the bigger picture is?
Absolutely. And with that said, how do we get actionable?
So a revenue-focused SEO and content strategy in motion looks a little like this in terms of process. So first and foremost, you're identifying your buyer intent. What are they trying to accomplish? What are they trying to do? What are their problems? And what are they searching for? And why are they searching before you create anything? Secondly, mapping your keywords to the journey. So understanding the buyer intent and then understanding how that pertains to specific keywords. Can be long form or short form, but using tools such as Google Tag Manager or any SEO tools to really understand how those two things tie together. Thirdly, creating content that is aligned both to buyer intent and those keywords that you have now identified, supporting the keyword intent as well as the buyer journey itself. Fourth, optimizing UX for conversion. So understanding how your navigation and pages themselves can be clear, concise, and actionable for your viewer, and reduce friction so that they can build trust and make the next step really clear for them. Lastly, measuring revenue impact. So this should be done repeatedly and consistently so that you can understand where and when you need to shift steps 1 through 4.
For what it's worth, I'm quite confident your C-suite will tell you to measure revenue impact frequently.
It might matter. You mean we're not all just here to have fun?
Yeah, I mean, I am.
We know. So in summary, growth doesn't happen by chance. It happens by choice, clarity, and the right partners. Here at Apiary, we're always more than glad to support our existing and potential partners. If there's anything in this webinar that really stood out to you or you would like to take a deeper dive on, feel free to reach out to us. I'm happy to take any area of this and apply it directly to your business or find ways to help support and grow your SEO and content strategy so that you can have a SEO intent-driven strategy that shows ROI. It's a mouthful.
Love it. It is a mouthful, but the good news is now I get to go on to my favorite slide,
The Q&A cat.
the Q&A. So thank you all, obviously, for your time and for your patience as you were listening through here. If there are any specific questions or even just feedback, we're more than welcome to hear it. You can throw that in the chat. I don't know exactly how to turn on. I don't know if anybody can talk, so you may have to throw it in the chat. Sorry, I'm a Google Meet guy, not a Zoom guy, so I'm technologically limited. With that said, the floor is yours.
I'm checking the chat. No questions now. We have this was great. Really appreciate you sharing your expertise. Thank you for joining us.
It's the nicest thing anybody's ever said.
Right? Oh, there's a Q&A. Should your content allocation strategy vary by company size, i.e., should a startup with limited resources follow these percentages? Yes, it's pretty much standard practice across the board. I think something to keep in mind here is volume, right? So a 50, 35, 15 split may look something like 5, 3, 2. Whereas for a large company that has a larger team to support their efforts, it may look more like a 20, 12, 5. And math is not my strong suit, so don't take those numbers directly, but you kind of get the example there, especially starting out.
Agreed. And the build there is with regard to volume and just reiterating Google's EAT kind of concept there. I would take one really strong piece of informational content, one really strong piece of commercial content, and one really strong piece of transactional content over 500 of each that were rushed out the door just because you were trying to get content out there. Take the time, especially in the startup phases, to build things that matter and that are impactful to your audiences. But yes, the general calculations or allotments or allocations are pretty consistent with that 50, 35, 15 split. It's just a more emphasis on making it very valuable and impactful content. Don't rush it out the door.
And for everyone that registered and attended, we will be sharing out the replay as well as the slide deck and a quick one-sheet guide to really implement and execute all of this in an actionable way. So keep an eye out for that. But if any other questions do come up, feel free to reach out.
Sorry, you're good.
I was like, what did I do? To myself, Danny, or any of the team members at Apiary, we're always more than happy to help you.
Except Sophia. I'm not helping Sophia. And just for context, because I know this is being recorded, Sophia is my sister and she's actually in attendance. So thank you all for attending. I appreciate it.
Cool. Your sister said rude.
That's not the first time I've heard that. Any other questions or feedback? Otherwise, we can give you all a few minutes of your day back. Big silence is golden. So,
agreed. We answered all the questions already. They don't have any left. Exactly.
It was that good. So I'll take that as a compliment. But no, sincerely, we thank you all for attending. Be on the lookout for future webinars from Apiary. And as Mel kind of alluded to, if you have any other detailed questions or anything specific to your organization, we're not trying to sell you anything, but we're here to help. So please don't hesitate to reach out. This is what we do. And we're looking forward to any sort of work, questions, feedback, things that come out of this, because it's all learning opportunities for us and figuring out how we can further help you or any future clients with Apiary. So thank you again for your time, and we hope you have a terrific remainder of the week.